All right, welcome everyone who's here live and who's going to be watching the recording later. This is our transit conversation for the month of August. And it's really, these are community conversations that I decided to start doing again. I used to do them a couple of years ago and then kind of moved away from that. And now I'm wanting to come back and really support and connect in that way. And I know that there's a lot of us who have been following the transits. I do have an exciting announcement about that today too, which I will share with you in a minute. But I wanted to just share a little bit about the transits and what I think is the some of the biggest benefits that we have by tracking them and following them. And I think some of them are not as well sort of thought about or understood or talked about. So I'm going to do that and then just share a little bit about Lionsgate, and then we'll see what you want to talk about. I think one of the biggest benefits of really traveling with the transits, if you will, is aligning ourselves more with natural cycles, aligning ourselves more with our cosmic allies, if you'd like to call them that, our celestial allies, and to not be so oriented to the human world all the time, but be a little bit more oriented towards the living world, which is what we experience here on the planet, right? Is our relationship to the moon and our relationship to the sun and our relationship to the earth, which are the most fundamental parts of the transits that you can follow. And that's often a good way to get started is with following the transits of the sun and the earth and the moons, and because they are very influential for us, and it's a relatively simple study, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But just to say that is a way that you can get going, is to focus primarily on the movement of the sun and the earth, and then potentially on the new and the full moons, which is what I'm doing for my transit reports. And then um, so we're connecting with our experience here that's really alive with us, with the earth and the moon and the sun. And then with the other planets, maybe not as much, because we don't experience their energies in the same way. And they are what I'd like us to all to remember is that the whole human design body graph is actually alive inside of your energy field. It's not separate from you. It's not out there somewhere. It's actually in here, and it's in your energy field. It's in your physical body. And so when we have a planet that lands in a gate, that means that it's actually happening inside of your energy field. It's not just happening out there. It's actually happening in here. And when we're learning our human design, usually what we're focusing on is the definition in our own human design charts, right? The parts that are colored in. And they're colored in because there's a planet in a gate, right? That's what creates definition, is when a planet lands in a gate, or multiple planets land in a gate, or a planet lands more than once, if it lands both in its unconscious expression and its conscious expression. That's what creates definition. And then that's what is really kind of consistent inside of our own energy fields. And it's a question of how are we then embodying and expressing the energy of that planet inside of that gate. And that's also influenced by whether or not the mate of that gate is also lit up, so that we have a complete channel, and then the centers are also defined or not. So you can build out in complexity, but the very first thing is to look at the planet in the gate and to see how is that operating inside of your own energy field. So that's what we do when we're looking at our own human design chart, our natal chart, which never changes, right? Our natal chart is always the same way your astrological chart is always the same. And then it changes, our experience changes with both the people who were around, because we pick up their energies and we amplify them in the places that are white in our charts, right? The places where they're defined, we pick up their definition and amplify it. And that's how we experience all of the different parts of the human design body graph over the course of our life. And then, of course, the other major influence is the transits and how the transits will bring definition to our charts at different times when a planet lands in a gate. Sometimes multiple planets land in a gate. And the more planets there are in a gate, the more potent that alignment is. And in astrology, we say when they land in a gate, right, we say that they're conjunct. And so they're kind of activating each other. And we can understand that in human design when they fall in the same gate, that they're activating each other as well, particularly in your natal chart. Now, in the human design way that I was taught to follow the transits, I was taught that um, that when a gate that is already defined in your chart already has a planet in it, that you won't feel the transit very much because you already have a consistent way of experiencing that gate. Now, in astrology, it's completely different because when a planet comes back and lands on top of a planet that's in your natal chart, it activates it. It actually, and like right now, Saturn is in the same gate as my natal sun and has been there for a while. It's going to be there for a while. So I'm getting a lot of activation from Saturn on top of my sun, right, in the same gate. And so it's up to you to see kind of how you feel about that. But one of the ways that I like to hold it is that when you know, a gate that is already activated in our own charts is being visited by another planet through a transit, is it gives us an opportunity to kind of revisit the way that we are expressing that particular gate, because now there's a new energy in it and it's there and it's coming to us through the neutrino stream. And so we can open up to what is a different way of experiencing that particular energy. So I know for me, like I've just been thinking about how is Saturn, who's the great teacher, right? Gives us one of our biggest life lessons. And how is Saturn helping me to understand my sun and activate and inhabit and express and embody the energy of that gate, of the sun in that gate in a different way? And I love that Saturn is really a teacher of discipline. That's the way how I really hold Saturn is a teacher of being able to bring into form new possibilities through our personal discipline, through doing something over and over and over again, and growing our capacity and expanding our understanding through our practice, really. And so that's what I'm really looking at for me. So that's one of the ways you can look at the transit. But the more classic way is to look at what new definition comes in that you don't already have in your chart. And I like to think of this as a way that we're aligning with what's going on with the cosmos. And when we start to learn to discern what's going on in our own energy fields, how is our energy being activated inside of us? That it gives us a way of understanding our human design that we can only get in that particular way. And it also gives us a focused way. And that's something that Rahu, the founder of human design, stated, which is that it's by following the transits that you really get to know your human design in general, but also your human design, because that's how you get to really feel when an energy is really strong for a period of time. Um, and I think that aligning to the cosmos, what's happening there, helps us to step out of the more conflicted and chaotic energy that's happening in the human world right now. It's just getting stronger and stronger. And I think it's gonna for a while. We're seeing a lot of competition in the world over who gets to control the dominant narrative, really, right? About what's true, about what reality is, about who we can trust, about what we can trust, and so on. And as we've seen more and more disclosures of all kinds of different information coming out, and there's going to be a lot more, it really is disrupting our sense of, wow, I didn't think things were like that at all. I thought they were like this, and it's turning out maybe they're more like that. I know personally, I'm in a pretty agnostic state where I'm curious and I'm wanting to be open to new things that I can learn without getting attached and not getting entangled, but just being able to be curious and to be present and to witness. So I think each one of us is doing that. But I know for me, I turn to the transits as a way to look for new opportunities that the transits are bringing me, and also guidance around pitfalls that I could potentially fall into because of the new energy that comes through. So I really like that about the transit. It helps me see, wow, look at all this energy that's available to me during this time. And if you've watched the last couple of transit reports, we've got a major alignment that is going to be stay with us for a period of months, which is Pluto's in the gate 41, and the north node of the moon has just moved into the gate 30, and they're creating a complete channel going from the root to the emotional solar plexus, and everybody's going to feel that energy until the end of November. That transit is going to be there till November 23rd. So that's a long transit because the nodes of the moon tend to stay in in the gates and in the signs for quite a while. And so that's an example of a kind of a long-term transit that I know I'm tracking because I don't have either any of that defined in my chart. I do have Chiron in the gate 30. So theoretically, Chiron doesn't create definition in my chart, but you can kind of play around that with that if you want to, because I think Chiron is a major influence on us. But even so, I have an open emotional solar plexus. So that is going to define my emotional solar plexus, which is going to give me extra energy right now. It's going to give all of us, unless you already have that channel defined, it's going to give you extra energy that is creative power that you can use in your life because the emotional solar plexus is creative emotional energy. So that is something that you can play around with. And it's one of the things that I like to look at with the transits. And I think that tracking the transits helps our experience of human design to really come alive because a lot of times when we look at your human design chart, it looks pretty static, right? And we think of our natal chart because the natal chart doesn't change. We think of it as being kind of static, kind of set in place. But as soon as you start looking at the transits, you'll see that the chart really comes alive depending on what is transiting during a period of time. And so it kind of, shines out different energies at different times. Like I just said, that whole channel. And if you have either the root or the emotional solar plexus open or both, it's going to bring definition to all of that. That's a lot of extra energy. It's two motors. And at the gate 30 is it's the most intense gate in the chart, right? And so that's a way that the chart suddenly comes alive in a new way. And you get something new to explore and something new to work with. And I see this as really the ability for us to use our imagination because the gate 41 is the gate of imagination, to be clearing out our imagination of the things that we may have absorbed from entertainment, from movies, from TV, even from books that we read, and then also from news and things we see on YouTube, different things we see on social media. The images that come that are digital tend to really impact us a lot. And so we're kind of carrying all that around as influences in our imaginations. So part of what we want to be able to do is clear that energy out. And Pluto helps us to do that, particularly ones that have to do with fear pictures, right? Or disaster scenarios. I know I've been not looking as much at, for example, video of earthquakes, things that have happened with earthquakes or with volcanoes, because I actually find myself getting a little entangled in them. And so I may look and then want to send blessings, right, and love and compassion to the people in the area of the world that is experiencing that. But I'm not necessarily diving in and watching a whole video about it because it's very impactful. So everybody needs to make their own choices about that. I've also become very discerning about what kind of entertainment I'll watch and for how long, because again, those images go in and they tend to stay there. So these are just things to be looking at during this time. And Pluto being in that gate of imagination, and Pluto's going to be there for another 18 months or so, maybe even longer than that. Um, And so you're still going to be able to do that with Pluto, but while the North Node is there, and the North Node is kind of our destiny, it's giving us the opportunity to look at how uh, do we want to hold on to and give passionate energy to the mission and the vision that we create with our imagination. So this is an opportunity for you if you've been kind of wondering, like, what is my next step? What is my vision for my future? What is my mission here? And you don't need to know the whole thing. You don't need to know what's going to unfold over the next 5 or 10 years. You just kind of need to hold a quality of energy that you're wanting to carry forward with you. And then the 30 will help you hold on to that and help you build your passion around that coming into being. Because the gate 30 is known as desire or passion, and it's the clinging fire in the I Ching. So it's that ability to hold on to a vision until the time is right, because it's emotional energy. So it's going to be about right timing and waiting until the moment is right. So this is an example of how you can look at one of the longer transits and really think about how you're going to utilize it for yourself. And also, you want to watch out for the pitfall of your if your imagination has been getting falling into fear pictures or into disaster scenarios, that you can become more aware of it, right? Because you could be actually amplifying it during this time with that gate 30. You could be making it bigger and bigger and bigger. If you're focusing on it, because it is this kind of intense, passionate energy, right? And your emotional, creative power can get caught up in that, and then you can create it even bigger, 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 right? And that is no bueno. You don't want to do that to yourself, right? So you got to watch out for that. So that's an example of how you can work with the transits to find opportunity, and then to also avoid pitfalls, and avoid potential conflict also, because sometimes they really show us ways we can potentially come into strife with different people, and we don't want to do that. So I thought what I would do is just show you just the Lion Gate. I talked about this in the video that I released this morning, but I thought I might just show you. We're now in the portal of Lionsgate. And so we're going to be in this portal for until the 12th, which is then going to lead us into a solar eclipse, a full solar eclipse. And so this is a super potent uh, time that we're in right now. And if we just take a look at this, this is the chart for the peak of the Lionsgate, which is on Saturday, August 8th. So Lions Gate always happens this time of year on 8/8, and it's associated with with the positive qualities of the number 8, but it's also associated with when you take the 8 and you turn it on its side, we create the infinity symbol. And one of the things that I've really been playing with a lot is that I learned from David Clements really is that infinity is a quality of energy. It's a frequency. It's not an amount. And so I'm really tuning into the frequency or the quality of energy of Lionsgate, um, because it's bringing that infinity energy, that ability to step into 0 point or the unified field or the Varanya which is, we call it in the yoga traditions, the great cosmic womb, right? Being able to really tap into that place of no time, no space, where everything is possible. And so the peak of this is on the 8th, but some people say it started at the end of July. Some people say it started on the 7th. Whatever it is, we're in it now. And then it goes through the 12th. And So you could take a look at this. You could take a screenshot of this and just see what new definition comes to you. But I wanted to point this out because there is this potent new definition that will be true for anyone who have this open in their chart, which is this line that goes from the 29 on the sacral up into the G center, and then from the G center up into the throat. And this is manifesting generator energy. So everyone will be getting this manifesting generator energy during this time because it's the sacral, which means it's generator energy, and then it's coming up and all coming all the way to the throat, and it's bringing more love and lovability, identity, and direction to all of our expressions during this time. And it's doing it through this really potent channel of the 1333, which is the a storytelling channel. And so the question then is, what stories are we telling that we're giving our life force energy to, that we're then embodying, right? Because the 29 is saying we're devoted to this energy right now, and we're going to embody it, the gate 46, and then we're going to tell empowering stories about it, and how we are activating and bringing through new energies for the world that we are bringing into being. And so you can really be leaning into that for yourself and seeing, and Jupiter is lighting up that gate 33 right now. And so Jupiter is going to make those stories really big, right? And we're going to ground ourselves into kind of personal narrative in the 13, because that's where the earth is. And then what is it that we're bringing forth? So this is another example of where there's a lot of extra definition coming in. Look, there are 5 centers that are defined during Lionsgate, right? This is so if you have any of these centers open, right? I have two of these that are open on me that are going to be defined: the throat and the emotional solar plexus. So somebody, everybody pretty much is going to have some of these new definition coming in, and this is yet another example of why following the transits can be really beneficial for us. Okay, so I wanted to just open it up to see if you have specific questions or things you want to talk about regarding the transits. You're welcome to just open up the chat here. Okay, so we've got one question here. Do feel free to put in more questions also as we go along, and that can be personal to you, or can be more about transits more generally. And so Tiago asks, is it true that manifestors feel transits more intensely, and why? Um, Not necessarily. I'd be curious to know what the rationale for that is. Do you know what the rationale is for that, Tiaga? So the way that I approach human design is I'm very based in the chart, because people say a lot of things in human design, right? And I'm always like, well, where is that in the chart? Show me where that is in the chart, right? Because the chart is, the human design mandala pretty much holds the entire human design system in there, right? And there's ways that the chart gets embellished a bit. But when I hear a question like that, I'm like, what would be the rationale why manifestors would feel transits more intensely? So do you, Tiaga, do you have any answer to that? I'd love to hear. I'd also love to hear, am I presuming that you're a manifestor? Will you let me know if that's true? Um, because here's the thing, manifestors, the only thing that differentiates manifestors differently from all of the other types is that they don't have a defined sacral, and they have a motor to the throat. So they can have radically different uh, um, designs from each other. Some of them have all of their centers defined except for their sacral. I have seen charts like that for manifestors, which means they have a lot of definition. So chances are the transits are not going to influence them that much. But then there are also manifestors that have very little definition. Who all practically only have a motor to the throat, and they don't have, like somebody could have only the will to the throat, right? That could be a manifestor uh, chart, and then they would be highly influenced by the transits. So I guess you don't have a rationale to share with me. So I don't really know why that would be true. So I would tend to say no. Uh, People are more influenced by the transits, generally speaking, based on their um, based on how much openness they have in their charts. Because our openness is where we tend to be influenced the most by other people and by the transits. Okay. So if you have a lot of definition, uh, it tends to be hard to change because you have a really consistent way of feeling your energy a lot. I've done readings for people who have, 8 or 9 centers defined, and then it can be quite difficult for them to change. And those people are going to be less likely to feel the transits intensely unless it brings definition to something. Like, for example, if they only have one center open and then they have a transit that defines that center for them, they could feel that more intensely. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, so Niyama has given me her chart here. I think what I'd like to do is because Zoom won't see it unless I download it. Okay. Um, oh, but where did the chat go? I need to see what your question was. Okay. So Naima, I don't know if I'm saying your name correctly, so I'm sorry if I'm not. Okay. Should I be looking at the house that the North Node in gate 30 will be impacting me? My design sun is in 30.3, and that is in my natal eighth house. Okay. So what you're doing right now is you are applying a astrological concept to a human design chart. We don't follow the houses in human design. Okay, just so you know, we don't do that. So you're welcome to take a look at it from an astrological point of view. But what I would say is that um, you do want to look at the house where your north node is, because that will be opposite where your south node is. And so that house will influence the energy of your north node. And because your north node is your destiny, then you would want to look at what is the quality of the house. So for example, my north node is in the 12th house, okay? So my quality of that house with my north node is to trust the mystery, to surrender to the unseen, to allow myself to be guided by that as I move into my destiny, which is new terrain for me. So you might want to look at the house, right? But I look at more, my north node is in the gate 48, which is in the same sign as as the house, right? And so that it brings in another layer, but I tend to look more at the human design gate that the North Node is in. But of course, it's showing up in that house in my astrological chart. I hope that's clear and that's helpful. So what I would say is that. So let me read your question again. Should I be looking at the house that the North Node in gate 30 will be? Um, yeah, I would look at your natal chart and see where is the north node in the gate 30 showing up. And then you, yeah, I mean, I have some tools that I use to be able to align that with the astrological degrees, because sometimes people want to know this. So, um, okay, so you mentioned your natal sun is in your natal eighth house, but how does that relate to your north node? Okay, because they may or may not, I don't know what the relationship between those is. Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. Is your north node is in the 30 and your design sun is also in the 30. Okay. Yeah. So then, and that's in your natal eighth house. So then your north node's going to be in your eighth house also because they're both in the same gate, right? Unless you happen, no, but the 30 doesn't straddle science. But it's the house. See, and that's the thing is if you have to see if the house will would d- Yeah, so you would want to see is your north node, what's the line that your north node is in? So you've got it for your design sun, but you don't have it for your north node. I hope that's clear. So ask another question if it's not, okay? Um, but yeah, what I would say here, so here we've got on your natal chart, we've got the 30, we've got the whole 4131 lit up in your chart, right? And then you also have this, yeah. So this is for yesterday, right? Or is this yesterday? No, this is for today. So you just ran it for today, right? And then you're looking at the how the two different charts go together. And you were wondering about your north node. Well, see, in your natal chart, your north node is in the 32, not in the 30. And in the transit chart, it's in the 30. But you've got something else in your 30. Oh, your design sun. Yep, that's what you were saying. Right. Okay. So yeah, so you're and it's in the 3 and your in your north node is in the is in the 30.6. It's in the 6th line. So chances are it's in the same house. Okay. I hope that answered your question. Let me just see if there's a follow-up down here. Yes, that's helpful. Okay, great. Okay, right. Yeah, transit north node. Yes, exactly. Okay. Yeah, so what I would say here is that that transiting north node, what I would ask you to consider for yourself is how have you already been experiencing the gate 30? Okay. The gate 30, the gate of passion, right? Clinging fire. It is the most intense gate in the chart, and when we see it, this amplifies your chart by 10. Okay, amplifies your chart by 10. And so you're a two motor projector. So you've got a lot of power. You don't have the a consistent ongoing power of the sacral, but you do have a lot of power in your chart. You're going to get a bunch of extra um, energy during this lion gate transit because you can see you've got this whole channel, right? And it's lighting up your sacral and your G center, which are open on you. So it's going to bring you a lot of extra energy aside from the 30, but just looking at the way that this works, right? So I hope what I was saying earlier about the how this particular transit is going to be bringing a lot of extra energy. So this is a really good one for you to be paying more attention to, Nema. Yeah. And I'd love to hear, yeah, just a little bit about how you feel like you might be feeling this. Okay, so I'm thinking about the transit. Will the transit north node be significant, and where will I experience the transit? You gave me great perspective. Okay, great. Yeah, I think the thing is when we've got this transit, especially when it's so long, is the north node is your destiny, right? It's the thing that you're moving towards. And right now, the question is are you moving towards that, and have you been moving towards that energy um in your own natal chart, right, with your design sun or your unconscious sun? How are you already experiencing that? And then when this new activation comes in from that north node, right, how is it giving you more understanding about a potential path for you leading it more into your destiny? Okay. All right. I hope that's helpful for you. But your natal north node is in the 32. And so that's a pretty different energy, although it does have a similar quality to the 30 of being able to hold on to a vision or an idea or a project until the time is right. So in that way, it's actually very similar. Interesting. Okay. All right. And so Helga asks, okay, if the root center is going to be defined for a long time, is the world in general going to experience more grounding for that time? Well, just remember that just having definition does not necessarily mean that you're expressing the more mm, uh, empowered and awakened expression of it, right? Because no matter what the definition is, and no matter whether it's a planet or it's a gate, there's multiple ways to embody and express those energies. So right now, the root center is being lit up by that 4130. And so we know that it's being lit up by the sensing circuit. And the sensing circuit is creative, right-brained energy. It's experiential, it's embodied. So in that sense, it might give us, give people who have like an open root, because it's embodied energy, it might give them a better sense of that grounding. And it also, for people who have an open root, it could give them the ability to feel that their connection to the earth more. I always recommend people who have an open root to go and sit on the earth, literally put your root center on the earth, right? And ideally put your back against a tree and feel that relationship of the tree to the earth so that you can start to ground yourself and feel down into the earth more, as well as reaching up into the sky, right? Which is what the trees do. Um, so I would like to think so, Helga, right? I would like to think so. And I certainly think if people have the desire to do that, it'll be more helpful, right? Um, and whether you have it defined in your chart or not. And I certainly have been hearing from the guides a lot, that we need to ground more and more, because the energies that are coming in are elevating our field so much that we can become kind of ungrounded, because as our energy is expanding and we're allowing our frequency to shift and to elevate, then we can feel a little more spaced out, a little more out of body, right? Because things are going on, right? And so in that way, we really need to be able to root ourselves more down into the earth. So I do think it's absolutely a beneficial transit. But like anything, it's also about how people choose to utilize those energies, if they're available to them or not. Because, if you don't know what's happening and you're not paying attention, you might start to feel a little more grounded, but it'll be amplified many times if you start to work with it more, in a more conscious way. So Helga, does that answer your question? Yeah, I'd love to hear how that was, how that was for you. Okay. Okay. So Nima says, I have a lot of desires and fire, but want to experience more spiritual connection. Yeah. Well, that, um, I guess it depends on what spiritual connection is for you. Um, and you're also welcome to unmute yourself, and we can chat if you want to, if you want to go into that a little bit more deeply. Um, but I would say that Pluto is absolutely, and and our North Node are very much about our spiritual connection. Um, and Pluto in that place of our imagination, because what is our imagination but our spiritual connection? You know what I mean? It's like our imagination is our faculty, our creative faculty, which is comes from spirit. And it's an aspect of who we are as spiritual beings, right? As energy beings having a human experience, is our imaginations are a core aspect of that, right? Just like our intuition, right? Intuition is a core spiritual attribute. Imagination is a core spiritual attribute, right? That comes from the aspect of us that is eternal, that is connected to the all that is, right? And that allows us to have perceptions and the ability to create beyond material reality. And so those are absolutely aspects of our spiritual connection. And so working with Pluto to clear out ways that you might have allowed your imagination to be co-opted or distorted by human created, uh, like I said, fear pictures or disaster scenarios, is very helpful. So that you can have more space in your imagination, so that you can start to imagine things that you want, rather than pulled into a downward spiral by imagining things that you don't want. And unfortunately, there are a lot of energies out there in the world right now that are trying to get you to focus on fear pictures and disaster scenarios, because it disempowers you and it makes you easier to control. And so that's something that we really want to be aware of and refuse, in my view, right? Refuse, right? It's also how certain kinds of mind control come in. And so we want to have command over our own imaginations. We want to have command over what we're putting our energy into, right? And then that clinging fire, which is our, the gate of the clinging fire is being lit up by destiny right now. And so we want it to be clear so that we can be fueling it with that clinging fire and holding on to it. But we don't want to be holding on to fear pictures and disaster scenarios, right? So I absolutely think working with these can help you with that, help with that spiritual connection. Um, Okay, so Helga is following up on that root question. And I'll come back to Naomi, your question about the about imagination. So, yeah, thinking about the shadow, disempowered and empowered too, right? Yeah. So, just for those of you who are not necessarily familiar with this way that I work with the expressions of all of the archetypes in human design, it comes from my book, Feminine Sovereignty, which is really an exposition of power, which is that we are have been really trained and conditioned into either the disempowered way of expressing something or the shadow way of expressing it. The disempowered either being a rejection of that energy, like so. For example, with imagination, since we're talking about imagination, well, actually, let's talk about the root center because that's what this came up with. So let's say you had definition in the root center, right? But or you're getting it through this transit, right? But you don't really feel connected to the earth. You're not sure what that is. You spend a lot of your time in your head, right? You're very mental, right? Maybe you have a lot of left brain dominance going on, and you've kind of rejected your relationship to the planet. And you may not have done that super consciously, like on purpose, and yet you're still doing it because you're putting all your attention in your head, and then you could be disempowered around the energy of the root center because all your energy is up here and it's not down here. So that's one way. So that's a kind of rejection or just a disconnection from it. And a shadow way that you could be using the energy of that root center is really that you feel that you're more grounded than everybody else, and everybody else should listen to you because you're more grounded, right? You're going to use that energy to try to control or manipulate situations or people to feel safe. Usually the bottom line of it is to feel safe, but also to get what you want, to try to orchestrate situations so that they come out the way that you want them to. um, and that root center in human design is a lot about timing as well. It's like, is it the right time for things to happen? Because that root center has that on out pulse. So we're always kind of tuning into, is it the right time or not? And somebody could utilize that energy to try to push something through, right? Not at the right time. And that could really disrupt the positive energy of the root center. So you would want to use that energy by tuning into, is it the right time? Is the pulse of energy on or not, in order to engage with something during that time? Um, but really, that awakened sense of being grounded, I think, and that's why I say, do it in the living world. Don't try to think your way into. People try to think themselves into things that can only really be experienced. Like grounding can really only be experienced. You can't really think your way into it. You have to get into your body in order to do it. And I think being in the living world and working with a tree can really help you with that. Okay. Um, Helga, let me know if there's any, how that landed for you. And if you would, you're quite sophisticated in human design at this point. And so if you have something else you'd like to contribute, I'd love to hear what that is. So in terms of imagination, how do you tap into it? So I'm a big believer in creative process. And unfortunately, we've largely been trained away from our creativity and been trained away from our creative process because we've been trained to really be very mental, right? To believe that our thoughts are what's real, that our minds are what we can trust, that things that we can touch what we can count, what we can analyze, what we can categorize, right? That those are things that are real. And we learn it from the earliest age, right? When we learn sign systems for numbers and for letters, very abstract, very left brain, and we're really taught to move away from our imaginative capacities, which are particularly strong when we're young. But we go from, just playing with shape and color and drawing things and, having fun to having to just learn how to write letters and numbers and then, know what they mean and then manipulate them, which is way more mental, right? So I, like in our sovereign sisterhood, one of the things I love to do is to teach creative practices that help open up these faculties. So let me just share a couple of examples of that. There's lots of different ways that I do that, but my latest obsession, if you will, um, is with a practice called neurographica. And this is not something that I am certified in at this point, uh, but that I have been playing with really a lot. And I find very useful. So, this is a practice that anyone can do. And you really just start with lines. Um, and you start with an intention. In this one, I started with a couple of circles, but a lot of times you just start with these lines, and the lines have different intentions with them. And it could be as simple like as to I want to feel more spiritually connected. And I want to tap into my imagination. And then another line could be like what you feel is in the way, right? I tend to think way too much. I tend to be in my head way too much. And you could draw different lines that each represent them. And then you just start playing with them and you start building an image that would represent that for you. So this is the kind of at the beginning of a drawing. And what you do is anytime you have lines that cross as you do what we call rounding the corners. So this one turned into this one over time. I just kept building it and building it and building it. And they often have kind of their own, they take shape if you just start to listen. Because if you plan this out, you're missing the whole point. What you're doing is you're listening and you're going, what wants to happen next? And you're kind of looking at the page and you're feeling into, oh, I kind of see a circle over there now. Oh, there's another line that wants to happen there. And it requires you to let go of some of your thinking mind in order to be able to do it. A little bit of a different style, but I really liked doing this one. It came really alive. I've actually added color to it since I took pictures of it. Um, and so this was actually related to a project that I have in Costa Rica. And I was just listing all of the different things that are involved with that particular project. And of course, I could approach all of those different elements really analytically and with my mind, and I do sometimes. But I wanted to create more coherence and to kind of lean into it and to feel into it more because imagination is much more of a feeling quality, but it also works really well with images. And I'm not a very visual person, and so being able to do drawings like this helps really awaken my visual capacity. And what I did was is I was just drawing with the different circles, all the different things that are related to that project. And some of them are big and some of them are small. And some of them are still just little tiny seeds. And some of them are already sprouting and becoming fruits. And some of them are even bigger than that, right? And they become kind of guiding lights. And they could be orbs, the light beings that are helping this project come along. And so I just lean into and just kind of feel into what wants to come out next. And that is some of the way I've done recently also, where I'm kind of bringing in different elements. And so these are just examples of how I've been working with Neurographica and how it is opening up my own imaginative capacity. Right. And I know Helga, who is also here, does a lot of creative practice herself. She finds that really helps her get out of her thinking mind, her analytical mind, and opens up the creative mind. So uh yeah, oh good. So yeah, I hope that was helpful for you in terms of seeing. I sometimes so I like the Neurographica. There's different classes that are available on YouTube. You can go and just go and find them if you want to. But I also really am a big believer in just working with line and shapes and colors and just letting yourself let go of structure, let go of needing for there to be a point, for there to be a goal, for this idea that you need to get somewhere, right? And to just let go of linear time, let go of that need to kind of, strategize and make things happen and just allow things to unfold. Another thing that I do with that is if I get activated emotionally, like if something upsets me and I'm trying to move that energy through my body, I also use this as a kind of imaginative, creative way to work with that energy rather than trying to think my way through it because you can't really think your way through emotions. They don't really live in the same realm as your thinking mind. So that's another way that I use this. Okay. Um, Okay. So Helga was just saying, thank you for the example with the root center. Rehearsal is good. Yeah. Yeah. Rehearsal is good. And then also, I understand to avoid news or images that stimulate fear. What to do when you get worrying health related fact based news from a doctor these days? How to work with the energy during this transit? Helga, that is such a good question. I think we all have to navigate our relationship to that kind of information based on our own values and our own belief systems. So I'll tell you one story. There's a woman in my community, bless her, named Deborah Giusti, who was diagnosed with breast cancer a while ago now. I'm not sure how long ago, might even be a year, a while. And she made a choice to not get surgery. She was told she needed to have a double mastectomy, which was really pretty extreme based on she had stage one in one breast and they wanted to do a double mastectomy. And she was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And so she's been looking a lot. She's been doing all kinds of different so-called internal, alternative, but I would just call natural medicine ways of approaching, that diagnosis that she had. And then recently, and she noticed that the tumor had diminished in size, right? And then she had another MRI recently, and it found two masses in her breast. And the person who she was working with, the doctor who she was working with, kind of turned to her and said, "When are you going to get that double mastectomy that you were supposed to get like a year ago?" And she was just like, and she had it stimulated fear in her. She was like, "Oh no, what if actually not getting that before and now I have two more masses?" And she decided to wait. She decided to do what she knew how to do in order to release that emotional energy, right? And then just be like, okay, I'm just going to wait and see. She was anxious because they did take biopsies. She goes, okay, let's just see what it is. Well, it turns out both of those masses were benign, right? There was no reason for her to have a double mastectomy because of them. So she has the tolerance, the inner tolerance, and the inner belief to go that route, right? But I have friends. I have a friend recently, also in my community, also very kind of, natural medicine oriented, who had a brain tumor released, and she's going full on big pharma. She's doing chemotherapy and radiation, right? And so I think we all have to decide what feels right to us. Now, those were major diagnoses, right? Especially the brain tumor. That was pretty intense, right? And so I get why she wanted to do that. There were also other reasons in that person's view, but still, and I think we all need to decide how we're going to respond to that. But one of the things I really do not recommend, and I think is very unfortunate, the programming that we've had around this is this idea that we have to do what our doctors tell us we have to do, right? When I hear somebody say something like, "Well, my doctor's given me 3 months to this, and that, and if I can't change it, they're going to put me on this thing," right? Like you have no choice in the matter. It's your body. You can decide what to do with your body, right? This is bodily sovereignty, right? Is you get to decide. And when you give your power to the medical establishment, that's a problem in my view, right? That's a problem because you're then not acknowledging that you potentially have the ability to find your own answers. Now, I'm not here to say to ignore what your doctor says, right? Um, I am saying also have authority over your own body and what you feel is right for you. Work with your human design authority. Like if you get a diagnosis from a doctor, ask your authority. Is this accurate? Do I need to pay attention to this? See what it says, right? See what your inner guidance says. Because ultimately, I'm a big believer that we need to go um, into our own inner being and work with that, right? And I know that in some cases, Western medicine is absolutely life-saving. Absolutely, it is. In other cases, it makes people sicker than ever. So I don't think there's a formula about that. Yeah. So I don't know how that lands for you, Helga. We're going to need to wrap up, but I hope that was helpful. I do think in general that worrying is not good. And because what is worry? Worry is taking something from the past, generally speaking, and projecting it into the future. And then we tend to create the thing we're worrying about because we're giving it energy. Right. Okay, good. It was a helpful, examples were helpful. I mean, like I said, ultimately, I don't think there is a formula for these things. Everybody has to decide, but I am an advocate for people to feel empowered around their own health choices and not feel that the doctor knows best and you always need to follow what the doctor says. Because unfortunately, at least in this country, I mean, Helga, you're not in this country, but at least in the United States, doctors have really become almost like just people who distribute medications. They're not necessarily trained the way that they used to be trained. They're trained in medications, right? They're trained by big pharma, what they should focus on with big pharma. And that's kind of all they know a lot of times. And I think that's also a problem, right? And it makes me more hesitant to just take their recommendations, right? And blessings to you if you get a doctor who actually knows something about how the body works and something beyond how medications work. Okay. All right, my friends, that is our transit conversation for today. I hope this was beneficial for you. Um, yeah, and I think that following the transit. Oh, the other thing I wanted to let you know is I have just um, released of my new program, which I have talked about forever, which is mastering the neutrino stream, mastering the neutrino stream, understanding the human sign transits. So this is a 4-module program. It's a self-study course, and it leads you through the how you really work with the transits. And one of the key things that it does is give you cheat sheets and templates and examples to help you be able to quickly find the information that you want to find in order to be able to understand it. So it really also helps us get what are we really looking at when we're looking at transits? Because, like I said, I think sometimes we just kind of look at it as data and try to understand it as data rather than recognizing that this is something that's going on in our own bodies right now that we can tap into, that we can utilize more. So, there's a lot of that is going on in that program. And I also put it on sale for the next little bit here because I I want it to be easy for you to say yes, to go ahead and get this program if it's something that you have wanted for a while, or if it's just something you're interested in the transits and you want to know how they work. And the main thing is that uh, I really give you a general understanding about how to work with the transits in my transit reports, but it doesn't help you understand how to really apply this and work with it in relation to your own chart, right? And your own life experience and the things that you are working with right now, the challenges that you're facing, the things that you're wanting to create, and so on. So this particular um, uh, self study program will give you everything you need in order to be able to do that. And it will equip you to be able to orient to the celestial news as opposed to the human news. Right. And we need both, right? I'm not saying don't pay any attention to what's going on in the human world, but when we have something else to focus on that gives us other guidance in addition to our own inner guidance, but what's coming to us from the planets, it also helps us to understand um, how we can balance out what's going on in the human world. Because I think that it gives us perspective in terms of knowing what's going on with the greater chaos and the greater conflict. And so it gives us perspective and the ability to kind of have some altitude or some distance from what's going on in the human world. And then to bring in these other perspectives. And so we have some ballast to that human world so it doesn't feel so heavy all the time. And we also have these other inputs that we can focus on. I found it enormously beneficial over the course, over the 6 years that I've now been doing transit reports, which is why I keep doing them, because I feel like it's such a service to myself and to my students and my clients, and then everybody who watches the transit reports and those people who are going to get this program. So if this interests you, it's just $73 for right now. It's going to be usually 147. It's just 73.50 right now. It's half price. So I encourage you to go ahead and get it while it is half price. And if you have questions about it, you're welcome to email me. All right, my friends, many, many blessings and much love. And I hope I'll talk to you in a couple of weeks on August 20th when we have our next community conversation, which will be about human design charts. And you can come and ask questions about the charts. All right. Bye for now.